Alright, so here's a video on graphing quadratic functions, and you can see here that I have two graphs. These are quadratic functions. One's opening up, one's opening down. Uh, Quadratic functions, they can open left and right, but we're not going to do those in this video. I might do something like that in a future video. But the ones that open left and right, the y term is squared. One that opens up and down, the x term is squared. Alright, so if we have one that opens upward, a is positive, see that? And if it opens downward, a is negative. So what's a? Well, here's the two forms that you will see the quadratic functions in. This one right here we refer to as standard form, and the a is the number in front of the squared part here. So if it's positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it opens down. And then this form here you're probably more familiar with. You probably see this more. The a is the term in front of the x squared. If it's positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it opens down. And then we have this axis of symmetry. That's a vertical line going through the vertex. The parabola, it's a mirror image. In other words, if you have a point here on the parabola and you go straight across to the axis of symmetry, that's, whatever that distance is. Well, if you go straight across the same distance, there's another point. You can basically mirror a point over. And we'll look at that in one of the examples. Now, the vertex, for a parabola that opens upward, the vertex is a minimum value. For a parabola that opens downward, the vertex is the maximum value. Alright, so let's look at the vertex. Whenever you're graphing a quadratic function, the first thing you want to do is find the vertex. Okay, so if it's in this form, okay, your vertex is HK. Okay, if it's in this form, the x-coordinate of your vertex is minus b over 2a. Okay, that's the x-coordinate of your vertex, where b is the number in front of x, a is the number in front of x squared. And then this f of minus b over 2a, well, this is your x-coordinate. See that? That's your x-coordinate, and this is your y-coordinate over here. Okay, well, how do we find the y-coordinate? Well, all this means here is once you find your x-coordinate, you take this value, plug it in for x, and that gives you your y-coordinate. That's all that is. Excuse me. So in this video, we're going to just concentrate on, we're going to look at them in this form. Okay, the quadratic functions are going to be in this form. I've got another video where they're in this form. I decided to go ahead and split them up because if I didn't, the video would be pretty long. It's going to be pretty long anyway, but so if you want to look at how we graph in this form when it's in standard form, you can just you can watch the other video, and I'll have links in each video to, so you can just click on the link in the description to get to the other one, to the other video. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at example 1. I've got f of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 15, and I want to graph it. And the way I'm going to graph it is I'm going to find the vertex, and I'm going to find the x and y intercepts. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is find the vertex. Okay, alright, so remember, let's look at this again. Remember, the x-coordinate of the vertex is minus b over 2a. Okay, so to find the vertex, we're going to have minus b over 2a, which is negative b. b is negative 8, so that's negative 8 over 2 times a. And in this case, a is 1. And so I've got, that's going to be a positive 8 divided by 2 is 4. And so the x-coordinate of my vertex is 4. Now, to find the y-coordinate, I'm just going to take this value here I found for my x-coordinate and evaluate the function. I'm going to plug it in for x. So f of 4 is 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 15. And so that's going to be 16 minus 32 plus 15. And this will give me negative 1. Okay? And so there's my vertex. Now let's find the x-intercept. Okay? So the x-intercept, well, how do we find the x-intercept? Well, you take this function here and you just set it equal to 0 and solve for x. And so I have x squared minus 8x plus 15, set it equal to 0. Now, this will factor. So I have x minus 5, x minus 3. So x minus 5 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. And so I get x equal 5 when I add 5 to both sides. And here I get x equal 3 when I add the 3 to both sides. So my x-intercept, well, there's my x-coordinate, 5. And then my y-coordinate, well, what's that? Well, see how I replaced the f of x with 0? So y is just 0. Okay? And then this one is 3, 0. So there's my x-intercepts. Now let's find the y-intercept. Well, how do we find the y-intercept? Well, we just evaluate the function at 0. We plug 0 in for x. And so I get f of 0 is 0 squared minus 8 times 0 plus 15. And so this is going to give me 15. So I get 0, 15 as my y-intercept. See, I let x be 0. See, I replaced the x with a 0, so that's my x-coordinate. And then I got my y value, 15. Alright, so let's go ahead and graph it. So I'm going to just rewrite my vertex down here so we can see it when I move all this up. Alright. I guess let's move this down so I can scroll up a little more. Alright. Okay, so here's my vertex, my x-intercepts, and my y-intercept. Alright, so let's go ahead and draw an xy coordinate system. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the furthest I'm going to have to go down on the y is just a negative 1. Okay, but see here I'm going to need to go on up to 15. You can go by 2s or 1s, it doesn't really matter. We'll see if we can go up by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Okay, and of course, I mean, this is not to scale. You can make it look nicer if you use graph paper or something like that. Alright, so let's go ahead and plot our points. So I've got the point 4, negative 1. I've got 5, 0. I've got 3, 0. And then we have 0, 15 way up here. Okay, and now I have my points. So now I can draw my parabola, and it'll look something like that. I know it's not very neat, but maybe you can draw it neater on paper using graph paper or something. Now, the one thing that you have to make sure of, you see when I drew this, how I have it rounded here? Make sure when you draw your parabola that you do not draw it like that. It's not a V-shape. This is the graph of an absolute value function. So if you draw it like this, that's not correct. It's rounded. It's a lot smoother here. Okay. Alright. So let's take a look at another example. So here I have f of x equals negative x squared minus 4x minus 7. Alright, so first thing I need to do is, let me change the colors back. Let's go ahead and find our vertex. Alright, so remember to find the x coordinate, we've got minus b over 2a, so that's negative 4. See, b is negative 4 over 2 times, and then a is negative 1. And so this is going to be a positive a positive 4 over a negative 2, which will give us negative 2. So that's our x coordinate. Okay, so our x coordinate's negative 2. Now we need to find our y coordinate. So how do we find the y coordinate? Well, we just take our x coordinate, plug it in for x. So I have f of negative 2 is negative. See, that's that negative sign. And then I'm plugging the negative 2 in for x. And so plugging negative 2 in for x. So that's negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2 minus 7. And so this is going to give us our negative sign, and then negative 2 squared is 4, plus 8 minus 7. And that is going to give us, let's see, that's going to be 1, so that's just going to be negative 3. Alright, so there's our vertex. Now let's find our x-intercept. So remember, to find the x-intercept, you just take this function, set it equal to 0. So my x-intercept, I've got negative x squared minus 4x minus 7 equals 0. And since we're solving this equation here, you don't want a negative in front of your squared term, so we're going to divide everything by negative 1. So x squared plus 4x plus 7 equals 0. Alright, now to solve this, well, this doesn't factor. So, well, in this case, we can either use the quadratic formula or we can complete the square. And I guess we'll just go ahead and use the quadratic formula. You're probably more familiar with that. So I'll get x equals, okay, remember quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So I get x is negative b is 4, so negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay. And that's all over 2 times a. Alright, so let's see what happens here. So we have x equals negative 4 plus or minus, and so let's see, this is going to be the square root of 16 minus 28 all over 2. And so this is x equals negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 28 is going to give us the square root of negative 12 over 2. Alright, so you can see here underneath the square root, okay, so underneath the square root we have a negative, okay, so what does that mean? Well, that's an imaginary number. Remember, this would be x equal negative 4 plus or minus, and that negative under the square root, that's I square root of 12 over 2. Okay, so what that means is there's not an x-intercept. Okay, it's not going to cross the x-axis. And we could have seen that without doing all of this. Look at this. You see my vertex is -2, -3. Okay. Well, look at that. If if I just kind of sketch this real quick, where's my point -2, -3? -2, -3. It would be down here. And then look at this. The parabola is opening downward because it's a negative, and so you can see it's going to go like this, and it's not going to cross the x-axis. So we would have known that before we even went to find the x-intercept. But in case you didn't catch that, well, this is what will happen. All right. Now, so there's no x-intercepts. So let's go ahead and find our y-intercepts. All right. So the y-intercept, I'm probably going to say I'm going to have to come over here and do it. So the y-intercept, well, how do we find the y-intercept? Well, we just evaluate the function at 0. So f of 0 is -0 squared minus 4 times 0 minus 7, which is -7. So my y-intercept is 0, -7. All right. So what I'm going to do is, there's my y-intercept. I don't have an x-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my vertex down here so we can see it when we're graphing. So that's -2, -3. So my vertex is -2, -3. All right. So I've got my y-intercept, my vertex. There's no x-intercepts. So let's see how we're going to graph this. Alright, so none of the points are going to be plotted above the x-axis because both of our coordinates here for our y-intercept and our vertex, the y-coordinates are both negative, so I'm going to just go ahead and draw my x-axis up here. And so let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so let's plot the vertex. That's -2, -3, which is about right in there. And then we have 0, -7 for our y-intercept. All right, so you can see here we only have 2 points. So how are we gonna plot this? Well, if you remember, when we talked about it over here, these points are mirror images about the axis of symmetry. Okay, so let's draw our axis of symmetry in. That's a vertical line going through the vertex. Okay, so let's draw that in. There's our vertical line going through our vertex. All right, now this point here, how many units, if we go straight across, how many units is it from the axis of symmetry? Well, it's 1, 2 units from the axis of symmetry. So to mirror the point over, we'll go straight across 2 units, and there's another point. Okay, so what we did is we just mirrored the point over, and now we can draw our parabola, and there it is. All right, so let's take a look at one more example. All right, so here's our last example. I have x squared plus 4x minus 3. All right, so first thing, we're going to find the vertex. All right, so the x coordinate of our vertex is minus b over 2a, which is minus b. B is 4, so -4 over 2 times a. In this case, a is 1, and that equals -2. And so f, well, there's our x coordinate. So to get our y coordinate of our vertex, we just take our x coordinate we found and plug it in. So f of -2 is -2 squared plus 4 times -2 minus 3. And so this is going to be 4 minus 8 minus 3. And so that's negative 4 minus 3, which is negative 7. Okay. And so there's our y-coordinate. Alright, so now we have our vertex. Now let's find the x-intercept. So the x-intercept, okay, remember you take your function, set it equal to 0. So I've got x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. Alright, so on the last problem when we found the x-intercept, we used the quadratic formula because it didn't factor. Well, this one doesn't factor either. So we could use the quadratic formula, but let's just go ahead and complete the square on this one. Okay? But remember, you can use the quadratic formula, but we'll use completing the square so you can see an example, of completing the square. Alright, so to complete the square, we have to move the 3 over. Okay? Equals, leave that space there, equals 3. So remember, you take the term in front of x and you half it, that gives you 2, and then you square that, so 2 squared is 4. And so I add 4, and since I added 4 to this side, I have to add 4 to the other side. And then remember, this factors, that's x plus 2 squared equals 7. And so I square root both sides. X plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. And then I subtract 2 to both sides, so I get x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. And so my x-coordinate, remember, I let y be 0. See, I replaced the f of x with 0, so y was 0. And so my x-intercepts are negative 2 plus the square root of 7, negative 2 plus square root of 7, 0, and negative 2 minus square root of 7, negative 2 minus square root of 7, 0. Okay. Now let's go ahead and find our y-intercept. So let's see if I can squeeze it in here. So the y-intercept, well, remember, you just evaluate the function at 0. So we get f of 0 is 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 3, which this is going to give us negative 3. So we have 0, negative 3 for our y-intercept. Alright, so let's come down here. I'm going to write my vertex down here so we can see it when we scroll everything up to graph. So there's my vertex, and I'll go ahead and write my y-intercept here so when we scroll everything up we can see the point. Alright, now graphing this might be a little tricky. Okay, where is it exactly on the x-axis? So what you might want to do is maybe take a calculator, punch this in, and put it in, write it as a decimal, maybe round it to 1 or 2 decimal places. So I'm going to pause the video while I do that. Alright, so I punched each one of these in my calculator, and for this term I got 0.65, and for this term I got negative 4.65. I just rounded it to 2 decimal places. You can round it to 1 or 3 or however many you want. Alright, so now we just draw our xy coordinate. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll need to go down to 7 so we can get we got a y value of negative 7 here, and then 1, 2, 3. Alright, so now we just plot the points. So negative 2, negative 7 is about right there. 0, negative 3 is there. And now this one, 0.650. Well, 0.65, that's not quite to 1, so we'll put it about right there. And then negative 4.65, well, -1, -2, -3, -4, and then it's going to be in between 4 and 5. It'll be a little bit closer to 5. So there's negative 4.650. And then we draw our parabola, and there it is. Alright, so I hope this video helped, and remember that these were all in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. I'll have a link in the description of this of how to get to the other one when they're in the standard form, the a times x minus h squared plus k. Alright, so I hope the video helped. If you like them, you can check out my other videos and subscribe. Alright, thanks.